So now moving on, the next speaker is Mr. Bebo, who is a leader in sustainable product business development, keynote speaker, and change maker with 26 years of experience. Anyway, there's another batch of coffee coming up. In providing leadership and management direction to global organizations. He has founded a number of sustainable companies, amongst them the Nurturing Co. and more recently Water Life, both which provide plastic-free alternatives. The Nurturing Co. is a disruptive online-focused business offering a complete range of bamboo-based paper products under its own brand Bambooloo. Water Life is a homegrown filtered water refill station company aimed specifically at helping hotels, schools, universities, and businesses reduce their dependence on plastic bottled water. Today he will be talking about plastic-free daily needs products, a topic which is close to his heart. So please join me to welcome David.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you to the organisers for inviting me to come and speak to you, and thank you for giving up your time this morning to listen. I hope you find it interesting, and I'll try and keep things moving quickly because we're a little behind schedule. I've been introduced. I've been in this region of the world, living here for about 4 years. My wife is Malaysian. We have a 2.5-year-old girl. It drives me crazy, keeps me awake at night. But I've been involved in branding and building businesses for about almost 30 years now. But I switched out of the fashion industry, moved into sustainability, and I had a moment of epiphany in September of 2013 and just decided one Saturday morning I'm going to try and do something a bit more useful for the world rather than myself. So I have two companies, but they're both aiming in the same direction. It's about the reduction of plastics and sustainability of our forests. We heard a lot this morning already, actually, about the amount of plastics which are appearing in our oceans. This is not a new thing. It's become a bit of a press darling. It's a kind of silver lining in a very, very black cloud for us all, because it's now gaining some notoriety, and a lot of people who wouldn't normally have been involved or aware of problems or even engaged mentally in sustainability are suddenly becoming aware through their own social feeds that these kind of things are going on around us. And it's something that we can all do something about. And there is a beginning, particularly in the removal of plastics in supermarkets and stores. There's some activity in Europe, and this is one of the first actually in the world where they have an aisle which is completely plastics free. This is a very, very big challenge for retailers. In fact, most of the things that we buy are wrapped in plastic. This is not to serve us, this is to serve the logistics systems of the retailer. It's been built that way, and we're just the grand recipient of an empty piece of plastic we can't do anything with. And the brands themselves don't want to take any responsibility for it. There are obviously people doing things, but we need to do a lot more. And 66% of people, when tested in Nielsen's report, said that they would prefer to be doing business with companies that are committed to social, environmental, impactful change, and actually willing to pay more for that product. And that's not necessarily a view that I hold. I think you should be able to buy it for the same kind of money that you would normally be paying. And that's certainly the goal of our company. So our company is the Nurturing Company. We have a bamboo-based brand which is called Bambooloo. We're just about to launch it in Singapore towards the end of this month. It's completely plastics-free. There is no plastics in our product, no plastics in our packaging. That's not been without some work to get it there. And we will start. The first product is toilet paper. It's a very simple product. It's not sexy, but it's an absolute necessity in every home. This is what our box will look like, and we also do it in a craft bag, 8-roll pack that removes the plastics as well, so there's no plastic packaging at all. And then we'll move into other products as we go. If in Singapore, and I use Singapore because that's where our company is based, The numbers would be a lot larger if we were to apply this to Malaysia. But if we manage to get the 1.2 million homes of Singapore to not buy just plastic wrapped toilet paper for 1 year, the amount of plastic that would not then be entering the environment is, as you can see, 177 million square meters. It's quite a horrific number for what is a basic home product. And there are ways and means, and that's what we're trying to do, to not have this in the environment. It can be done. So we're trying our best to do that. Now I'm going to talk about another business. It's quite new, actually. I've been working with an enterprise in Singapore called Antler. It's an accelerator program. I've been sort of thrown into a room with a bunch of other people trying to come up with a grand idea. I already thought I had a grand idea of removing plastics out of retail, but actually we came up with something which was equal in merit and certainly worthy of our attention. And we've decided to call that Bibo. Actually, we started off calling it Water Life, but in fact Water Life sounded a little bit too serious. But Bibo means drink in Latin, and our focus is to try and help us wean the nations of the world off the plastic bottle addiction that we have for a number of reasons. First of all, you wouldn't want this outside your house. There are some images going around right now of a flood in the Philippines where basically the streets look just like that. The water rose, brought product out, plastics out of the landfill, and now the streets just look like that, which is pretty shocking. And there's certainly a lot of press going around in terms of what it's doing, and it's now deemed to be something as dangerous actually as climate change. In fact, it's the petrochemical industry is part and parcel of the wider climate changes here, and it's a great participator in making of plastics. Sadly, 500 billion bottles of water are sold every year. That's 1 million a minute globally, but we only manage to recycle about 9%. So sadly, although we might segregate our plastics, as has been happening even in the UK, all they were doing was taking it from you, crushing it, strapping it down, putting it on a freighter and shipping it off to China. And China has now said, no thank you. We don't want more rubbish, we've got enough of our own to deal with. And so we have to find another solution. And the solution isn't just to try to find somewhere else to send it. The solution has got to be for us not to be using it, or to find ways to mitigate and reduce. Won't go into all the bits and pieces on there, but there are some crazy numbers here. It takes 3 litres of water to make 1 plastic litre water bottle. It takes 250 millilitres of oil to make that 1 plastic litre bottle, which will then not be recycled and will kick around for 400 or 500 years, it may be longer. It is not something we can carry on doing. It's affecting marine life, it's affecting mammals, and it's also now beginning to leach into our bodies. There is no definitive study on how that might impact us yet. The timeline is too short, but it's not going to be good for us if we look at what's happening to the whales, the seals, the birds, etc., that we're seeing in pictures on social media. In a study that we did in Singapore, interestingly enough, the reasons why people are buying water, and it does differ country to country, 76% said it's because of accessibility, which is quite strange considering Singapore is a very well-developed country with a lot of choices, but it has a huge amount of convenience stores. It's very, very easy to buy bottled water, so it's become a crutch on which people depend upon, and as such, no other solutions have been supported or put forward for a number of years. But bottled water is not as safe as we would hope or like to think it is. In fact, WHO did a study recently of 11 different bottling plants around the world, and over 90% of the water they tested was found to have microplastics in it. Now, they can't define whether those microplastics were in the water and not removed, or actually, and more seriously, did they actually enter in through the bottling process? This is something that has to be resolved, but that's a pretty scary statistic, considering we actually all think this is the safer option to drinking tap water. And Singapore has one of the highest consumptions, actually, of bottled water anywhere in the world per capita. It's a $134 million a year market in a country that has one of the best closed-loop water systems in the world, where more than 90% of the people consider that the tap water tastes good and is drinkable. Yet this keeps climbing. It's that convenience. The other solutions are not there yet. So this is what we're planning. We're planning to deploy 1,000 refill stations around Singapore in various different locations, from hotels to hospitals to key football places, shopping malls, sports arenas, etc. And this will have a 7-stage filtering system, which is actually probably too much for Singapore, but it's very needed in other countries such as Malaysia and Indonesia. And the purpose of this is to get you to bring your own refill bottle and to not be buying another plastic bottle of water. No water is really free, although we turn our tap on and we think, oh, that doesn't cost me anything. Actually, it's cost somebody something, whether it's the municipal government support or whether it's the person paying the water bill itself. So, our stations do have a charge, but that water could actually be sponsored by somebody. And more importantly, they'll be networked. So you've got to find the stations, you'll know exactly where they are, you'll be able to find out where you can buy a bottle. And if it's in a hotel or in a food court, for instance, the water could be sponsored by one of the food brands or something of that nature. So in fact, it actually doesn't cost the person downloading or and dispensing the water. It may not cost them anything, but somebody else is actually paying for the maintenance and support of the machine. And you can fill it up and you can share exactly how much you're saving, how many bottles you've saved, how much money you've saved, how many bottles that particular machine has saved, things of this nature. 7-stage filtration system, that's the one we're looking at. It's probably, as I said, too advanced for Singapore water, but will certainly add a very nice crisp taste with the coconut filter at the end. But for other countries, we believe this is the sort of the bare minimum we can do in terms of the groundwater requirements. And it's a great opportunity to sponsor it. We were with Marina Bay Sands yesterday, who have a great problem of supplying water for their conference attendees. It's costing them over $1.7 million a year just to provide bottled water, which obviously is quite a lot of bottles. So this kind of program is of vast interest to them. Whether it's a larger hotel or a 100-bedroom hotel, which is another one we're speaking to currently, who actively want to remove the plastic bottles from the rooms. In that case, it's costing them over $125,000 a year just to put bottled water in a room every day. And it's a part-sponsored approach in terms of being able to wrap the station, so we can have brands that are linked to the requirements of the audience around it. And we have different types of schedules. It can be bought, it can be leased, it can be there's a service agreement, a contract, and how that might work for your businesses. But ultimately, in Singapore, we have some goals for this, if we're able to achieve that, and that is to reduce quite considerably the number of litre bottles that may be used, and also the amount of water that would have gone into those plastic bottles being made in the first place, and also the amount of oil that would have been used in making those bottles. And part of our focus is obviously to provide some funding to NGOs who are actively out in areas of the world where people basically just don't have any water and are struggling day to day, or have to walk miles to a well. We've seen some of these quite distressing images, I think, from time to time. And there are a number of great organisations out there trying to do their best to help resolve these situations, and we believe that we should be trying to help fund those. And if at some point in our future we can get actively involved in it, then we will, but we think there are really already a great deal of clever people out there doing some really great things that we can help with. So, I think to sort of finish off, our message really here is, fill your bottle, don't fill the landfill. And, from a nurturing company perspective, we want to try and bring plastics free as a common component of your shopping basket, not an unusual thing, which it would be today. And thank you very much for your time and listening. I'll be here for about another hour if you've got any questions, so thank you very much.